Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Con to Couch. With so many conventions closing down this year because of the dreaded beer bug, we're taking this online and providing an outlet for you to see some of your favorite guests and have some of the coolest discussions and hangouts that you can find that you would normally see at your convention scene. Tonight's just kind of a chill show. It's going to be more kind of a free-form thing, but we do have some good guests for you. We've got Jim Carpio and Peter Bryant from the newly constituted TSR Games, and our usual games master, Jay Parker, is going to be kind of moderating that discussion. And we've got JVP, John Zerplatten, back, and he's going to be telling us about what's been selling from Flint Dilley's sort of Indiana Jones archive auction and what's coming up in the near future. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it on over to Jay.
All right, good evening and welcome to Con to Couch. So this week we will not be playing Buck Rogers or playing, Buck Rogers. So we are on a little bit of hiatus while I work on other stuff for Flint. So we decided to do a little talk show this week. So this week we're discussing all things Flint Dilley. This week I brought on the indie RPG crew from back in the day that started me in the industry, Peter Bryant and James Carpio. Peter Bryant was the redheaded stepchild of the tabletop industry. Everyone wanted to burn him at the stake until I came along. James Carpio is the man who brought us together and created the ungodly trio that now is what we are today. So without Carpio, we would not be here. And then JCP, who wrote this fantastic book as my entire desk falls apart, Video Game Writing and Game Design. This is a must-have if you want to be a game designer. If you've not read this or bought it, get your ass to the bookstore and get a copy. All right. So tonight we're going to break this show into three segments. The first segment is going to be JZP discussing. Oh, JZP is with us tonight, which I introduced. I'm doing well. So JZP is going to talk about the auctions tonight, and then after that, we are going to do a flash slideshow and discuss the items on the screen. And then at the end, we're going to have a surprise event where we run Flint through the grinder. And of course, Flint is not here tonight because he's out at the beach house getting suntan, while the rest of us in the northern regions are freezing our asses off. So JZP, I'll start off with you.
All right, have at it. What can we start with? What would you like to know? Something about Flint or something about what we're currently doing on eBay?
Oh, the auctions. Let's talk eBay auctions. What do we got going?
Yeah, so right now on eBay, we're doing a number of sort of pieces from Flint's collection. So Flint has had this massive career, as you know, that's gone through a number of big properties. And he has a lot of interesting artifacts from his days in Saturday morning cartoons and in doing stuff in gaming space. And so we had access to a number of really cool items. And so we decided to start putting these up on eBay. We've already had 2 or 3 sales. We're kind of in the middle of a third sale right now, which will end tomorrow. So if anybody's interested, you can go to eBay and you can look me up. My name is Hannah Vachel, Hanavachel. For those of you that are fans of the game Fear Effect, that was a character I created for the game Fear Effect. And she's been active since 2000. Currently, we have 14 items up for auction, and they include items from Visionaries and also items from Inhumanoids. So we have some original production art from Inhumanoids that's currently up there. We have some artifacts from the TSR days when Lorraine and Flint were both heavily involved in TSR. We have artifacts from that up there. And there's actually a Transformers Laserdisc, Japanese Transformers Laserdisc that's really, really hard to find. That's up there too if you're a Transformers fan. That's really a really cool, item. Very, very, very hard to find.
We've got that one up on the screen right now, and we also do have a link to your eBay channel in both the Facebook and the YouTube chat. So folks who are interested should be able to go right there and start checking them out.
Awesome, thanks, Mike. You can check out all the stuff that's there. There's really unique items from the TSR days, including a TSR sales handbook and also a TSR business notes when they were basically doing their meeting to kind of see what the status of TSR West was and how it was doing and what their plans were. So if you're a fan of memorabilia from the early days of TSR, you'll find some really interesting stuff. And then we're going to continue to be doing these auctions. So figure over the next definitely 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to try and do it at least twice a week. We're going to be putting up items for auction that will be from Flint's collection. And there's some really, really cool stuff coming from the early days of TSR. As you guys know, Flint worked with Gary Gygax pretty intimately and was involved in a lot of the stuff that was going on with TSR and D&D back in the 80s and 90s. And so we have items that were actually from the Gary Mansion here in Los Angeles that will be going up. As you can see, you've got up right now. That's a first edition D&D module, still wrapped in its cellophane. So usually when you find these, you'll find these, open and used, and with good reason. I mean, people wanted to play them, they wanted to enjoy them, and so you find them in that condition. It's rare to find one that's still kind of sealed and factory packed. You can see it's got some little bit of dirt and grime on it from sitting on a shelf in a garage, but as soon as you pull that cellophane off, it's brand new. Or if you want to keep it just in the pack, if you're a collector, it's something that would be really hard to find anywhere else. And then what we're doing is, for everybody that buys something related to Flint's career, Flint will go ahead and do an autograph a card for you. So we include that card in the purchase if you want that customized or dedicated to anybody. He's happy to do that. And we also will provide a picture that will show you that when Flint signed the item or signed the card for you. So it's for those folks that are collectors. It's really really fun. And then moving forward, as I mentioned, there's going to be some really amazing stuff that really nobody in the world has access to but Flint. If you're a Transformers fan, there's some massive things coming. If you're a fan of Saturday morning cartoons, there's also some pretty massive stuff on its way. But we're also trying to make it so that the ordinary collector could jump in and get something that they want. So specifically, we have Visionaries art right now. It's Floro Dairy. So if you guys know the artist, pretty famous for doing a lot of stuff for Transformers and stuff back in the day. If you look on my current sales, you should see a pack of Visionaries art. I think it's currently sitting only at about $100, and it's for 6 or 7 drawings, which are pretty cool. We have a big collection of these, and our issue was, do we sell them as a big massive pack and let this go to sort of a super collector that can afford it? Or do we break it up and say, you know what, let's let the average collector or somebody who really loved the shows, loved this era of animation, give them a chance to get something at a much more reasonable price. And so Flint and I went the second route, which is, let's break up some of these bigger collections into smaller bite-sized units so that the average collector isn't priced out and they can go in and try and take a shot at getting some of this material if they want it. So yeah, it's an exciting collection of items. Flint has been really good about kind of archiving and keeping a lot of the stuff that he did over the years. If anybody has any questions about this, you can ping me through eBay, just send me a message, or you can find me on Facebook and send me a message, and I'll be happy to talk with you and see if we can connect you to any of these items.
I'm surprised there's anything left, because Zach Glazier was already like drooling when he was on last time. It's like, and his wife's like, really, Jay? Did you really have to? So
yeah, well, we had some surprising stuff go already. So Flint had had basically the press packet from the Transformers, the movie. And even though it was a little bit damaged, the folder and the papers had been a little bit, sort of abused, it just was such a hard item for anybody to locate. And for hardcore Transformers collectors, it's kind of an object that you're just not going to find anywhere else. So, we put it up expecting something to happen, and it just went crazy. And
Are there any buy it now options for any of this stuff, so that because you're going to be shutting out people who say for example, somebody doesn't have a lot of money, right? And you're saying you want to be able to sell to the average bidder. Yeah. Are there any buy it now options, so that, say for example, somebody's like, look, I don't have like a ton of money, but I could just pay this amount and get it?
Yeah. So what we're doing is, rather than doing a buy it now, on some of the items, we do allow you to make us an offer. And the offers are pretty reasonable. So if you're interested in any particular item, you can reach out and say, hey, would you take X? On this particular set of auctions, because Flint is out of town and I was having difficulty communicating with him, we didn't put any offers up because then I got to reach out to Flint, get him to say, right. So it was like, but there's phone tag and text tag happening that we didn't want to deal with. But on the next set of auctions that will go up, yes, there will definitely be an offer price. We're trying to be reasonable and we're trying to be cool with everybody. Some of the people that have already made some successful auction purchases through eBay, I've told them, I said, I will warn you when new stuff is coming. So I send them a message a day before on eBay and say, there's more material that's going to be landing. So be sure to check it out. So up right now, you have a tendril from Inhumanoids, and that's a piece of original art. And you can see that the price on it is pretty reasonable at $150 for a show that was well known for that time during sort of during Saturday morning animation. And at that price, that's something that the average collector should be able to go for. We'll have some other pieces that'll be a little bit smaller if you're a collector of specific D&D and TSR type stuff. A lot of it will be going up at pretty reasonable prices. In fact, I think you saw the first edition thing that we put up there, still sealed in the pack, started at $30, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, there are reasonable prices on a lot of the stuff. Flint's not trying to make a fortune on this. What he's really doing is using the funds from the sale to fund development of new ideas and new IP. So all of this money is not going to buy Flint a car. It's going to basically buy the ability to hire artists and hire musicians and hire voiceover talent and that sort of thing on new properties that are in development, which I think is pretty fantastic. It's all of this money is going back into other creative endeavors rather than something that parks on the driveway, and I think that's pretty great.
So David Benavides, I'm watching the channel, I'm watching the comments and stuff, and so David Benavides asked, "Will there be any signed pieces?" So can people make a request to have Flint sign any of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you win an auction and you want Flint to sign something, like right now, I think you have Mr. T. So if you wanted Flint to sign this script for you, he'd be more than happy to do it. And you can either have that just signed by him, or if you want it personalized to you, then he'll do that as well. Some people buy this with the idea that maybe they're going to hold on to it for a few years and then maybe put it back into the marketplace, and so they don't want it personalized. Some people want it personalized because it's something they want to add to their collection and hang on forever. Personally, me, anything that I get signed, I always get personalized because I never have any intent of ever giving it back out again. But it's entirely up to you, and we're happy to do whatever you'd like. And then we'll also take a picture of Flint signing it, so you'll know that it was actually authentically signed by him. And I send you that photo once you've made the successful auction.
Yeah, I have a box of stuff that means something to me. And I told my wife, I was like, when I die, you can just burn it. It doesn't matter. Like, nobody's going to care about this but me. Like this is for me. And if I died before you could just throw this in fire because no one else is going to care.
Well, a couple of years back, I was at a con, and Ernest Borgnine was signing photos, and he had a photo from The Wild Bunch, which is one of my most favorite movies of all time. And so I went up to him and I fanboyed out, and I've met so many celebrities over the years of my career that I'm kind of jaded in that regard. I don't really fanboy out over anybody, but he talked to me for about 15 or 20 minutes, was the most nice, gracious guy you could imagine. The photo was supposed to be $20. He said, forget it. He said, I had a great time talking with you. And he gave me the photo and said, do you want me to make this out to anybody? I said, yes, sir. I want you to make it out to me, because this is never going to anybody else. And it sits with pride in my living room right now. So, yeah.
And he's the same gentleman that said the key to long life is masturbating every morning.
Dude, Ernest Bird, I love that dude.
I guess I'm going to be dying young.
Yeah. Good dude.
It's a true story. He did say that. That's where a meme came from that I did, because
Okay.
He got caught on a hot mic saying it on a morning show. And I was just like, what did he just say? And then they played it over and over on Fox.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, right
Right.
up.
Do we have any other
right now,
auction stuff
sorry.
that's coming?
Let me just real quick comment on the thing that's up right now. So this is Garbage Pail Kids, which obviously, if you're of a certain age, you knew that this got really big in an era, right? This is an uncut proof of Garbage Pail Kids cards. It's a rolled document, so it'll roll back up when we ship it out. Really a unique item, and for those of you that don't know, Flint actually did develop a Garbage Pail Kids show, animated series. However, it was so controversial, it never actually played in the U.S. It played in Canada. And so these are the kind of things we have that we're sort of putting through the mix.
Yeah, definitely. Really cool, interesting pieces of pop culture history, and especially those things that didn't really necessarily make it to air, or just made it to air in maybe very limited markets.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that the fact, Garbage Pail Kids. So you look at those cards, right? Yeah. And you get a feel for what they are. Like there's no question about what these cards are. So if you were to write a series and do like an animated, any kind of animated thing based upon those cards, it's going to be a certain kind of show. And like, what did you expect?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, remember, we're talking about a different time, right? We're talking about a different era when different things were allowed to be done. But even for that era, there's a lot of potty humor in the cards. There's a lot of gross out humor in the cards. There's some stuff that's kind of really disturbing, including, children being turned into sausages and other things that are just kind of, when you stop and think about it, almost horrific in nature. And, and so, yeah, trying to adapt that into an animated show that you could, let kids watch and mom wouldn't be mad about. It's a challenge,
Yeah, I imagine that it would be, it would probably be almost just as hard, if not even harder today, maybe for a whole host of different reasons.
Exactly. Well, yeah, people's sensitivities and the things they're concerned about have shifted quite a bit since those days. There are things that you can't do today that you could have done 10 years ago. If you were to remake the television show series Friends today, I guarantee you it's not going to star 6 white people. That's just the truth of how life in the world has changed, even in that short period of time. So yeah, you look at things through the lens of the era in which they were, right, in which they were developed, and kind of look at the sensitivities of that era and what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable. And gross out humor was acceptable in ways that I think it's less acceptable today. But also what was acceptable for children, and what would be acceptable today are different things. And so, yeah, so you kind of have to take it through the lens of when it was, not through today.
Yeah, one of my good friends, he says that the past is a foreign country.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. Absolutely great way of looking at it. And for better or worse, we're sort of in this now constant changing environment where, things that were acceptable even 2-3 years ago now find themselves somewhat controversial. So it's just something that you have to be aware of, right? You've got voice actors who will no longer voice a character that's not the same ethnicity as they are, and giving up jobs to other actors that have that same ethnicity. And my question is, okay, but who created that character? Do we have to make that person the same ethnicity? And who wrote that character? Does that person have to be the same ethnicity? Because I can look at the writing staff of The Simpsons, and I don't see the diversity in the writing staff that I'm supposed to see when I watch the show. So where do you draw the line, right? Where do you say this is acceptable and this is not? Can women write men? Can men write women? Can old people write children? Can younger people write older people? Can straight write gay? Can gay write straight? In my career, I've written dinosaurs and aliens. I don't know the writer that's a dinosaur or an alien. I don't know where you find those guys. So yeah, so you have to kind of go, where do the lines get drawn? And
right.
And for us, it's kind of a constant shifting, changing line. So yeah. So when you kind of have to look at it through the lens of the era that it was created in.
And what's interesting is we pay actors to be other people and other things, right?
Exactly.
So it's like an actor should be able to act, right? Like they're not. Are we going to get to the point to where like you can't play anybody who's not exactly yourself? Like I
Yeah.
think there are lines, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about the whole thing. I'm really being serious. There really are, like, where do the lines go?
Yeah.
All right, guys, we gotta move forward a little bit here.
Yeah.
But you're hitting it right on the nose.
Otherwise, we're gonna go to the Spike Lee
No.
argument.
I'm just trying to contextualize this stuff so that as people look at it, they have a sense of the era in which it was developed, and there's some really unique items in here that everyone.
Absolutely, and that is a great point. Yeah, you have to, and we lose that a lot of times in the modern society. Is people in different eras don't think the way we think now, and people who come after us aren't going to think the same way we think now. And there's a term specific to history study that covers that. I think it's presentism. It's something like that.
Yeah.
That sort of covers that, and it's really not. It's really not a good way to look at things in the past, and unfortunately, we've sort of fallen in the trap and in our current little slice of time where we want to do that.
Yep, agreed. Think about what people 20 years from now will be looking back at and going, "Why were all these people wearing masks?" there's gonna come that moment, right? So yeah. But anyway, lots of good stuff here, lots of fun stuff, and keep your eyes open. There will be plenty more coming.
All right, so for our next segment, actually, this is funny because a lot of the stuff you all were talking about is going to be in our next segment, anyways. And I was like, stop. Okay, so Mike, do we have any ads before we move forward?
We actually don't at the moment. We do. Black Tide Rising, Pound Dog Media's first graphic novel project, did fund back mid-October. We are in demand right now, which means that we are still accepting orders through the production process. We're in our pre-production phase right now of the full book. Having some meetings and getting some contracts ironed out, and that is well on the way. And hopefully, in the next week or two, I'll have some more updates to share with that as far as us getting into production and maybe sharing a little bit of teaser art here and there. So I'll drop a link to that in the chat. And for right now, we're ready to roll into your next part, Jay.
James Scarpio, real quick, do you have anything coming out soon?
Who, me? No, not really. As far as published work, no.
You got a podcast channel though. Pimp it real quick.
Yeah. So I, besides other things in TSR Games, I'm also the president of Grindhouse Media, which does a show called Show Us Your Crits. It's a weekly live stream virtual RPG show. Currently we're doing Curse of Strahd, and I'm actually, if I can pimp this now, so in a few weeks we're going to be doing a Star Trek RPG with Aaron Rosenberg, Hans Cummings, and Terry Mixon, and possibly a couple of authors from Modifius, the writers of the new Star Trek RPG. So really looking forward to getting that streamed.
I've got a link to that, and we'll go ahead and drop that in the chat so folks can find it.
Dude, seriously, that's awesome.
Peter Bryant. What I know you're not doing Mythwits anymore, but you must have something you're doing.
Now, Mythwits kind of just.
I know.
Anyway, so actually, so working with TSR, we have Top Secret that we're doing. So this is our game, Top Secret. If you want to play a spy, role play a spy, this is the game to do it in. But we recently put out The Drop, which is our newest module. We have two more that they're done. So they're both of them are done, but they're in that, Jay, that 90%. When you get to that 90% phase, you only have 10% left. That's actually 90% of the work. So we're doing all that, like that finalizing work. It's amazing because you'll work on a project for months, and then that last tiny little bit takes the most time of all of it. So we're in that phase. But we got two more modules coming out: Forge with Fire and Rendezvous Oasis, which are going to come out, which are going to be really cool modules for Top Secret.
JZP, do you got anything cool coming out in the near future?
Yeah, first I was gonna sympathize with Peter. Yeah, the crunch is it's so true that you do 90% of the time you get 10% of the work, and then 10% of the time you get like that final 90% all comes together. So very sympathetic for that. Currently, right now, I'm working on some video game projects. I continue to deal with Jurassic World. So I wrote the Jurassic World Evolution game and then all of the downloadable content that went along with that. I'm continuing to nurture that along, and there'll be some cool announcements coming hopefully soon. I'm also writing a comic book right now that we'll be announcing at Comic-Con. Hopefully it'll be in person. And next year, I'm supposed to have it all written and by the end of the month. So wish me luck on that. I'm 2 books into 4 books. So I'm working on that. And then doing some development at a major film studio on a couple of really huge properties that are game tie-ins, but also sort of more broadly now, sort of franchise tie-ins as well. So I'm banging away on that and just trying to keep my head above water until we can all go back to being with each other again. So
Nice.
yeah, that's what I'm kind of working on now.
I normally don't pimp stuff out, but I mean, there's a book that came out this weekend, Cyberpunk Red. So
Pimp away.
the second biggest IP I've ever worked on besides Doctor Who was Cyberpunk. So that came out. I still haven't seen it. So I'll let you all know what it looks like when I actually see a copy. I'm sure most of you.
Jay, they haven't sent you your copy for your work you've done on it yet?
No, they haven't. Hey, but I know to deliver because another company I know never even sent me the product. I had to buy it myself. So we won't mention that one. But yeah,
I've done that on more than a few games that I've worked on where like I'm still waiting for the copy to come from the publisher or the developer. And so I just walk down to Best Buy or GameStop and buy it myself just so I can have a copy. Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we're going to have a slideshow and we're going to discuss. Each of you gets 1 minute to talk about what the image is on the screen. That way we can get through. I think there are 13 because it was Friday the 13th, so I was in a mood when I threw it together. And then afterwards, we're going to have a little video, and then we're going to have a quick discussion. So, Mike, if you want to put up number 1, and we shall begin.
Okay. All right. There's number 1.
All right. We'll start with James Carpio. Tell us about how the show impacted you. Visionaries.
Wow, Visionaries. This is going back. I don't know. I guess it was kind of that era when a lot of stuff was science fantasy, and this was definitely one of the shows that kind of scratched that itch, as it were. So, I don't have too many memories of it, but I know that it was just kind of one of those things that was in that genre that really was kind of alone in that genre for at least a short period of time.
Okay, JZP?
Yeah, interestingly enough, we have some visionary stuff up on eBay right now. Some more coming, but yeah, I mean, for me, I'm sort of a beat older than the rest of you guys. So when this show was out, I was already into my early 20s, and I was not, I wasn't fanboying on it the way some other people did. But I think to what James was saying, which is really interesting, is it was tying together a couple of genres that really had only been kind of effectively done before with Star Wars, which is, it wasn't science fiction, it was science fantasy. It was taking magic, introducing magic into the world of science fiction in a really unique and interesting way, which we didn't see again until sort of like a lot of the cyberpunk stuff that was coming in, Shadowrun and stuff like that. So to me, that's the impact that it had. That it was kind of getting to this idea of fusing together multiple genres in unique and interesting ways, and telling, sort of archetypal hero stories, which I love.
Peter?
I'm going to have to admit, I've never actually seen this show. I do love this guy's porn stash, though. It is fantastic. And I'm going to imagine that they sold toys with holograms or something. Was this like holograms in the chest or whatever? But yeah, because I had to look this up. It came out in 87, 88. I was 17 or 18 at that time, depending on the year you're talking about. So I probably wasn't watching this, a little too old for this at that point.
Oh wow, man! I've been watching like cartoons into my 20s.
I'm not saying that I didn't still watch cartoons, but this would have been one of the ones that was like, I didn't get up on Saturday mornings when I was 17 to watch cartoons.
The only memory I have of this is I won a Commodore 64 computer on a radio contest because they were having they played like a clip, and I only ever seen a commercial. I've actually never seen the cartoon, and I called in and I'm like, it's Visionaries, and like, you've won. and then I had to get my parents on the phone, and they're like, "What?" It's like,
You want a
they're like,
Commodore
"No, it's a
64?
joke," and they actually had to go pick it up.
That's
So
awesome, dude.
So that landed me 2 Commodore computers because I already had one, and then I got a brand new one
Awesome.
that I played lots of TSR games on. So, all right, let's go to number 2.
All right, just a moment here. Let's stop that one and get this one up here. All right, there we are.
There we go. You see, you guys are talking about this. I'm like, son of a bitch. So we're going to get to it. I actually have here, I have the book that has all the cards in it from back in the day. And when Flint was talking about this and he was showing this stuff, I actually have a poster too. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So we'll start with James again. Garbage Pail Kids.
So this completely fits into my sick, twisted mindscape very well. Like I love the Garbage Pail Kids. I think they did a movie of it, which was completely horrible, and I don't remember the. Oh no, actually, if it was shown in Canada, then I wouldn't have seen the animated series. Little quick story though about Garbage Pail Kids. Steve Jackson Games did a Garbage Pail Kids kind of like a Pog game a few years back, and I got it free because I was demoing for them at the time. And my niece Moira, I gave her it. I was just like, well, I'm not going to use this. Here, have this game. She was so freaked out by the art. We're at my house here. She actually took it, smiled, and then hid it behind the piano. And then, like a couple years later, I found it, and then another year later, she confessed about hiding it. So, you know, she was young at the time. I think she was maybe like 11 or 12, but it like freaked her the hell out.
Good going, Uncle Dreg.
Yeah, I know.
JZP.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we have some of this up on eBay right now. But to me, the thing about Garbage Pail Kids, and I think it's sort of like its ancestor was probably something like Mars Attacks, which was the subversive nature of what you're dealing with. There is something kind of wonderfully in your face, kind of poke the eye of authority when you've got a child character with her head in a guillotine, and she's actually named Guillotina. I mean, I feel like there's sort of a long history of this kind of entertainment / humor / political commentary, if you will, social commentary. That I think when you look at it, you go, okay, it's just kind of gross out silliness. But when you think a little bit deeper, it's actually getting into some pretty interesting places. And so I like projects like this. As we were talking earlier, something like this could never be made today. There would be impossible. It would literally be impossible to find anybody who would support this today. And to me,
unless you're Blix Dreger Eye.
Yeah.
But to me, that's a shame because art, even art aimed at children and young adults, shouldn't always be safe. There should be a little bit of danger sometimes in your art and in your creativity, because that's what challenges the norms. That's what challenges the approved narrative. And sometimes you need that to actually advance and move forward to wherever we're headed next. And so I'm all for the cute and squishy stuff, but I'm also for the interesting stuff like Garbage Pail Kids and Ren and Stimpy minus its creator for all of his problems. But that kind of content has always appealed to me.
And this actually goes back a lot, because if you look at the original Addams Family cartoons that were posted back in I think the time frame was at the 30s, maybe.
Yeah.
And then Edward Gorey's stuff, like the Gashly Time Teenies, which is basically Garbage Pail Kids in its own little weird form. So I mean, I can appreciate this. I have a sick sense of humor, so I'm totally down with Guillotina.
Yeah, I have a completely sick sense of humor, and I, Garbage Pail Kids were really cool for me. And I think kids. So you take a 12 or 13-year-old, and I don't know about girl. I've never been a 12 or 13-year-old girl, but I've been a 12 or 13-year-old boy. So I can comment on that. And I know 12 and 13-year-old boys are, they're gross and they look at the worst stuff and they think the worst things and they're kind of horrible human beings. I don't know. But it's okay because that's where you're balancing out, what you're going to do with life, and you're being introduced to new things, and you're going from a child to an adult. You're making these moves into different times in your life, and to have this kind of stuff available, it's fun, kind of fantasy, but it's also the ability to explore some of the darker things. And there's something to be said for dark comedy, and for sarcasm, and for, challenging norms. I don't think any kid's going to look at this and want to put a kid in a guillotine. I mean, it's just not. It's just fun to see this kind of stuff. You had, I don't forget. I forget all the Garbage Pail Kids because it's been forever. But you had like a kid that played with snot, and and kid that was into, like, I don't know, any kind of garbage or any kind of gross stuffing. 13-year-old boys are gross, and I'm certain 13-year-old girls are just as gross in their own way, just because it's the age, right? So I'm all for this, and like you're saying, I think today, the youth is missing out on some of the things that are not being able to be presented to them because people, their sensitivities are a little too high, I think, in a lot of ways, and I think we need to challenge it. I think kids are stronger and tougher than we give them. I was.
Oh, I agree with you completely. But I think an image like this would send any entertainment or business lawyer for any company running for the hills as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I agree. It's a shame. It's a shame because kids are fine with this stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, my only memory of Garbage Pail Kids was all the country hicks I knew. We all used to collect them, and there was only one card I wanted, and that was the one that had the Garbage Pail Kid's head on a Veritech fighter. And I was that's the only card I cared about. So, all right, let's go to the next one. All right, are we already to this one? Holy shit! Oh wow, yeah.
Oh, sorry. That may be the wrong Transformers image. Stand by. Let's see.
Wow. We actually might skip that one because we got the video anyway. So.
All right. Okay.
Anyways, the next one's gonna be Transformers. Right. So James.
There we go. That's the right.
Transformers and you. 1 minute.
So Transformers was something that I definitely watched a lot of at the time, at least the early part of the series, along with that horrible knockoff GoBots.
GoBots.
But I was already in my teens, I think, like in high school when this came out, or maybe not, maybe early high school. But anyway, Transformers was one of those things that actually had a really amazing storyline, that it wasn't like GoBots, which was just really, you can tell, was made for kids. There was some topics in Transformers that was just completely majorly adult. And I didn't really like it when it started getting into its weird offshoots, but like the original series of Transformers was pretty amazing. So no, definitely something that I heavily enjoyed, and Autobots and Decepticons, and totally rocked. And even, I played with toys way I was into way older than I should have played with toys, but definitely I had my Transformers toys.
That is one thing I'll maintain, that we talked about deep fakes before. We'll know that deep fakes have really arrived and really mainstreamed when we start seeing Comic-Con videos of Flint talking GoBots.
JZP,
Transformers. Yeah, well, Flint has told me some really amazing stories over the years of developing Transformers. And Transformers, when it came out, was not a big part of my life. However, I felt the cultural significance of it because it certainly caught fire for a period in the 80s. That was amazing. And then sort of now with the films, sort of been introduced to a whole new generation of folks. But my Transformers story that I had is I went to a con with Flint probably about 10 years ago, and the Transformers panel, and of course, a lot of people come in to talk with Flint about Transformers, and the panel's going great, and it's everyone's having a good time, and then it gets to the Q&A, and the guy stands up in the back of the room, looks like he's probably in his mid-40s or so, and he gets to the microphone, and he can't speak because he starts crying. And he's literally like choking back tears trying to get the words out. And finally he points at Flint and he goes, "Why did you kill Optimus Prime?" And then he just started crying again. And Flint kind of went back a little, like, oh, right? And said, "Well, Hasbro had a new toy line they were bringing out, and I wanted to kill off the old toys so they could bring in the next toys for the next round of episodes." And later went up and talked to the guy and was really like, spent about 10 or 15 minutes with him and talked him kind of down off the ledge. And the guy said after he saw the movie with his mother, he came home and locked himself in his room for a week.
Oh,
and
wow.
Now because he was so upset. And you could tell that this had remained, this had burned itself into his psyche and was still kind of emotional baggage he was carrying, 25 years later, 30 years later. And to me, that said something about the power of story. It said something about the power of characters. You're taking a toy, you're converting that toy into animation, and you're giving it a personality and a life. And it becomes so meaningful and so emotionally engaging that somebody becomes so invested in it that when you kill it off in a film, you literally break their heart. And I still to this day remember that. It was just the power of story. So when I look at Transformers, I think of the power of story.
We're actually going to get to that, the crying part in a little bit here. That's how we're going to actually wrap up the show.
Okay.
Peter.
It's funny. I'd never been like a big Transformers person. I've obviously seen it because growing up, it was a cartoon. But I think it's because it hit a little late in my development. So I think Transformers came out when I was somewhere around 15 or 16 or whatever, and it was kind of geared for just a couple years earlier. So I was just a little too old for Transformers, I think, or at least I don't know. In my mind, I was whatever. But I feel that though, the guy you're talking about, the character dies and he's like, why'd you kill him? And then, and then it's like, well, there were reasons outside of that. It wasn't just the story. There's the cartoon, there's like toys that need to be sold. And it's funny because I relate that to my daughter loves Spider-Man. She loves the new Spider-Man, the what's his name? I can't think of his name now.
Miles Morales, I believe.
No, the kid,
Andrew Garfield.
No, the next one.
To the actor.
Not Toby, not Andrew.
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland. That's it.
Yeah.
So she loves Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Loves him. And so when in spoiler alert, in Infinity War, when he gets dusted, right? My daughter, like I saw her, I knew it was coming. Her face just like melted. She's like, and I looked at her and I said, "Baby, it's fine. He's gonna be back. They're gonna bring him back. He can't be dead." And she's like, "How do you know?" I was like, "Because Sony owns that property, and Sony's not giving up that property for any. Like, there's no way Sony's giving up that property. It makes them way too much money." I was like, "I guarantee you, he will survive this and be back. There's no way he won't be." And plus, there's another Spider-Man movie already like coming out, so he's gonna be fine. And she was like, "Okay." It's just funny. I was able to console my daughter that the fact that Spider-Man was going to be okay because of a bit, because business-wise, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's the thing that some fans, obviously, you don't necessarily want them to be thinking about that. You don't want them to be thinking about the business considerations that are underlying why creative decisions get made.
Right.
But the truth is that creative decisions get made, sometimes things you have no control over,
right,
as the creative, that are literally being driven by other forces within the company, whether that's the PR people, whether that's the marketing people, whether that's, the toys that they need to sell next year, can have a huge effect on what you're doing creatively. So, yeah.
And if you really want to see some inside baseball on this, watch that, the series of Toys That Created Us, or was it the toys that, what is it? Oh, it was a Netflix thing, the toys that
I know which one you're talking about.
It's such a good show because it gives you such inside baseball on what was going on and why decisions were made and what happened with these toys and why they went through the changes that they went through.
Yep.
Transformers for me as a kid, I had Transformers. I was more G.I. Joe, which we're actually going to get to in the next slide. The only story I have for Transformers actually came from Mike Pondsmith when he worked in the same building. And he said they'd come in, you'd see the guys, the toy developers running down the hallway. Next week, this character is going to be released as a toy. He needs to be in this week's episode, and they have to quickly add like a random Transformer to the episode before it's streamed out because before they sent the film out. And so that's where all the random Transformers would pop up in the episodes because it would be one of those they run down the hallway with the script. This is coming out next week off the factory line. You have to have it in this week's episode so kids will want to buy it. So
yeah,
all right, let's do the slide.
Flint told me that towards the end he was saying, "This is a what that turns into a huh?" They were just coming out so fast.
So Flint worked on the second series of G.I. Joe, which I believe it's actually this one because it had all the ridiculous the news reporter for the first season of it.
I actually think this was post Sunbow, if I recall correctly.
And
really?
Yeah, because I think this was post Flint, the particular character shown here.
Well, he put himself into the series. So there's a Flint, G.I. Joe. So he actually.
Well, yeah, but that's Buzz Dixon doing that to him.
Yeah, but Flint didn't.
All right, let's go to the next slide then. We'll skip G.I. Joe, even though G.I. Joe is close to my heart.
To me, when we're talking about stuff like this, so the interesting thing about G.I. Joe is, again, could you make it today? Not in its present configuration. It was too much a celebration of military and weaponry, which I think you can even the toys themselves. I grew up with G.I. Joe. It was sort of in the Vietnam era, and the toys radically changed through the course of the 60s as it went from being focused on military to being focused on action. Yeah. And so, G.I. Joe grew a beard, and suddenly he was not a soldier as much as he was a man of action who went on adventures and was kind of a pre-Indiana Jones type character. So
yeah. Oh my God. So I had a.
Hold on. We got to move on. We're not even like halfway. We might actually skip a bunch of these. So yeah, we're gonna skip a whole bunch. I got too many. We're never gonna finish them. But we'll do humanoids. Sorry, guys.
So what I can tell you,
a big discussion on Transformers in a minute, anyways. But if you have other stuff,
really quick, we have a lot of really cool Inhumanoid stuff that will be going up on eBay. We've got stuff up there now, some original art, and there's also going to be production storyboards and scripts and everything else. So if you're a fan of Inhumanoids, keep an eye on the channel. There's going to be stuff that'll be there for you.
Yeah, there's tons of Inhumanoid stuff. Like, oh my God, some of the art stuff you guys put up that Flint was showing. I'm like, dude, I'm going to send someone out there to like club you on the head and bring it back. So, James, have you ever seen Inhumanoids?
No, I remember because there was a toy line, I'm sure, right?
Yep.
For some reason, I remember commercials about the toys, but no, I think at this point, I watched a lot of cartoons, but I had my genres that I watched, and I don't think Inhumanoids fell into that at all.
So James, one of the things you might be interested in, I'd have to run out into the garage and get it, but we have Inhumanoids toys, and I don't know if you can see them in my hands, right? They stand about 18 to 24 inches tall.
Wow.
They're massive toys. They're huge things, and you'll be able to get a crack at those real soon.
But that's the funny thing. James and I are almost exactly the same age. We're very close in age, and I agree, James. Humanoids was not one of my cartoons. I think I was just like maybe 2 years too old for it. Like they didn't target, the 15 or 16-year-old with
that.
What I liked about the property is it felt very much like kind of going back to to what the Japanese were doing with all of their, big monsters and Godzilla and Gamera and Rodan and all of that. It felt like the Western American version of that. And there was something kind of very cool and interesting that I don't think has been really recaptured in any meaningful way. I think Pacific Rim got a little bit close, but I don't think there's been that massive monster property that's really resonated yet, since that era.
All right, Peter, have you ever seen this?
No, I was saying I never really watched Inhumanoids. I'd seen the commercials for it, like James. I'd seen the commercials for it, but it just never interested me. I think I was just a little, like maybe 2 years too old for it.
I saw a couple episodes, and then I actually managed to find myself a golden book in Humanoids. the other day. And my wife's like, "Is that a golden book?" I'm like, "Yeah." What the hell is that on the cover? It's like they can't talk about it, but yeah, that's what it is. All right, so we're not going to be able to finish up the slideshow, but that's okay. Let's get right to the meat of the show, which you did. JZP discussed, the gentleman at the convention that was very upset. So, Mike, you want to roll our memoriam video, and then we're going to have ourselves a little trial of Flint Billy, the murderer of some people.
Yep, got that coming up right now. Just a moment.
And Blix, don't pick on my video skills, man.
I had that one loaded earlier, but somehow it got unloaded. But nope, it's loaded about all over again. So we'll play that right now.
I'd like to thank Dan Bacon for giving me the list of the Autobots that got killed. Starscream gets thrown in there because he did have the most epic death out of everybody in the whole movie. So, yeah, Flint. I mean, he's not here, but as JZP pointed out, the death of Optimus Prime and the death of all those Autobots. I mean,
I gotta say that's kind of amazing to me because. I wasn't the biggest Transformers fan. I'd seen some, I'd seen episodes of it and everything. As a kid, I watched it, but I didn't follow it kind of like the way a lot of people do. But I'm actually, I didn't realize there were so many that he had killed off. It's interesting because most cartoons wouldn't kill anybody off. Like G.I. Joe. I don't think a single person died in G.I. Joe. Robotech was interesting to me because they killed off a few characters in Robotech, which was. Was like, oh my God, they're actually killing people. But that was a Japanese cartoon. And apparently they had toned that down. Like they edited it for American audiences to make it less, less deaths. So it's interesting that he was given the freedom to kill so many Autobots.
Well, I hate, I was going to say, I hate to tell this story because it's really a Flint story that's better told by him than anybody else. But he mentioned at one time, that the original plan was to have a charge of the Light Brigade, and they were going to kill off everybody. They were going to basically just wipe out the entire line, so that they could bring in the new toys. But the thing that, like I said, the thing that resonates with me is how you can engage somebody, how you can get people emotionally invested. The fact is that the way we entertain each other is we tell each other stories. And the things we understand most about stories is characters, because we are one. That's what we are. I mean, what else can we be, right? And so creating a character is a kind of magic that you guys all have the skill to do, and that I've been fortunate to be able to do for a number of years and get paid for it. There's something wonderful about creating a character, creating an individual, and then having other people be emotionally involved and engaged in that character and care enough about that character that when you do something drastic to them, like hurt them or kill them, that they feel it, that they actually feel it. And that's the magic. So, Flint has been doing that a lot of years. We've all been doing that a lot of years. I've been doing a lot of years. And so if there's a guilty or not guilty on this, Flint is 100% not guilty, because that's the ultimate skill set you need to be a creative and to be able to connect emotionally with an audience. To me, all art is emotion. If you can't connect emotionally with somebody else, you're not creating art. And the fact that he was able to create emotionally with so many fans of that property.
I think we've just found Flint's trial counsel for the future.
Yeah. Well, I consider Flint a brother from another mother. We've been working together for almost 30 years. We got set up on a blind date, interestingly enough, by a mutual friend while we were working on a project with a mutual guy that we knew. And he said, "Guy, I know somebody that I think would just be like, you just hit it off." And we literally were set up on a blind date, met at a restaurant, and started basically a 30-year friendship after that. And cool. It worked into us being able to work together and create with each other and go through a lot of adventures together, whether that was Riddick or Niantic. And I've never met a more perfect person to have in the room for the first 30 minutes than Flint. The guy is just a machine when it comes to thinking creatively and being able to fire off the top of his head. And his ability to take something as abstract as a robot that converts into a truck, converts into a robot, and make it something that literally, decades later we still talk about.
Right.
That is a magic trick. That is a magic trick, and I say that not only to him but to you guys and to everybody else that's out there creating and making content. That's something that needs to be celebrated. It needs to be acknowledged. That's
a good point. It's a truck. So it's a truck that turns into a robot, and you cared that it died, right? I mean, like
hey, that was a sentient robot, you bastards.
No,
it had
but
feelings, and it got killed.
No, it doesn't. The point is, it's a truck that turns into a robot. And people cared about him dying. No, that's good. That's actually really fantastic. I always say, when you watch something, if you feel uncomfortable, or like you watch any kind of fiction that is generated, like that is complete fiction, and you get a sense of emotion out of it, that is well written. Whether you liked it or not, it's well written.
Sure, yeah, and that's that's a point that Flint has made on the show and in the book, that he thinks that part of it really kind of kept Transformers from sort of fading into the ether when the 80s gave way to the 90s and time just kind of rolled on. And I tend to agree with that. I think that really sort of laid the groundwork for that to be an enduring franchise.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the death of Optimus Prime, more than anything else, is what kept Transformers alive.
Yeah, and I also think that like when you see a villain get killed and you're just like as happy as can be that the villain died, like you're not just like, oh great, the movie's over and the hero won, but you're just like, oh, I'm so glad that son of a bitch died, right? That's good writing because
it absolutely is. I won't go off on too much of a tangent here, but it's reminiscent of what professional wrestling does very well, or used to do well back in its heyday.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
When you had that heel, that bad guy that would get the audience so worked up and so hating this wrestler, when they would throw stuff at him and boo and hiss and curse and everything else, and boy, they were really setting up that big payoff when he just got whacked in the head by the babyface.
Yeah. And I think it also reflects a wonderful collaboration, which is something that happens in our space that doesn't happen in a lot of other creative spaces. So like I'm writing dialogue and I'm writing stories, but those are not a direct connection to the audience. They go through directors and animators and artists and motion capture performers and voice performers, and everybody is bringing their unique skill set to the party. And when you put it all together, you just get a kind of magic. And that, you look back at the Transformers animation and you see animation that was top notch for its day, and you see and hear vocal performances that were spot on, to the point when they made them into films, they wouldn't accept anybody else voicing Optimus Prime, right? But you're calling it's like you get one guy who gets to voice this character and nobody else. So you look at all of the skills of all the people that go into making that, and everybody plays their part. Everybody has a role, and when you get to the end of it, you've created something from nothing. That's the magic, right? The magic is there's nothing in front of you, and you go poof, and now you've actually created something. It defies the laws of physics. It's not supposed to happen. We're not supposed to be able to do this, and yet we do it daily. And that to me is the wonder of being a creative. And and Flint is one of the best.
The Transformers movie reminded me of like a Michael Mann film, because the music that went with every scene was just like it got you like into the scene, and then like even like the instruments of destruction is as blazing away, and they're having their epic battle, and then it ends with Iron. Of course, it looks like Ironhide gets killed, and then later he gets dropped into the vat of acid instead. But it's like you're watching it, and the music's got you pumped. So every time a song comes on, you start getting jacked up for the scene, and it just kept delivering over and over. So with the music for Optimus Prime dying is just like it's like you've been jacked up almost the whole first part of the movie, and then all of a sudden it goes from happy like kick-ass music to like it's funeral music for a fucking robot.
Yep.
and all the happiness you feel and all the joy you feel of the Autobots, even if the ones that are dying, it's still like a blaze of glory. And then to have just like a realistic scene to wrap up war looks so exciting, and then oh look, a very important person just died, and that's what happens.
But I think it also goes into the writing and the storytelling too, because, for example, there's some cartoons that from the 80s and 70s that I'll go back to and are so painful to watch because the animation is so horrible. But things like 2 examples, the Transformers is one of them. The stories are so well written, the characters are so intense that you can forgive the animation of the time, because you're really there. Even GI Joe's like that to some degree as well. Or even I'll go back as far as Star Trek the animated series.
Yeah,
That is horrible animation, but if you look at who was writing Star Trek the animated series at the time, these were actually the guy who wrote Ringworld,
Larry Niven.
Larry Niven, yeah, was writing stuff for that. I mean, there was some top-notch science fiction writers, and even though the animation today just falls apart, those stories are pretty amazing. So I think, going back to Transformers, the stories and the characters were so intense and so good that, going back to 80s animations, you can sit through it because you're engaged more by the story than visually what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, I would tack onto what you're saying there, James, too, because I think you're hitting on a super important point, which is that these guys were writing the idea that actions had consequences.
Yeah.
That war was not without its tragedy. That there was a consequence to what was happening in this story with all of the conflict. And I think, that could be a real slap across the face for somebody who wasn't ready for it. And because it was such a slap across the face, I think it left that impression. It left that indelible moment that as I mentioned, the guy was crying about it, decades later. That's impactful storytelling. That's moving beyond a cartoon. That's moving beyond a toy. That's something else entirely. And I think that's also a good thing to say to people that are creatives today is, if you can capture that, and you can capture that in, a web series or something you're doing on YouTube, or a web graphic novel that you're producing, or whatever it might be, that's the power, man. That is the power. It doesn't take a lot to tell somebody a really amazing story.
And I think that we sort of really have a sense of responsibility that if kids are watching something and you're showing them all this, it's very violent, Transformers are violent. They're fighting all the time, right? We don't generally tend to think of that because it's a cartoon, but I mean, they're shooting laser beams and stuff at each other, right? There should be consequences. Kids should realize that war and fighting and aggression does lead to some serious consequences. I think there's some kind of, it seems like there's a moral responsibility to not glorify, to just straight up glorify combat. There should be some feeling that, oh my God, combat does suck. There's a suck to this. It's not just this fun thing. Oh, we're going to fight with swords. It's going to be great. It's like, yeah, it's great until you get your head cut open. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for kids to realize that.
I'm going to use the word. I'm sorry. Well, my last point here.
Go ahead.
I think for like even Transformers, I want to use the word mythology. It's basically a new mythology, because if you think back to the tales of the Greek gods or the Norse gods, everything they did that was glorious had horrible consequences tied to it. And I think even stuff like today, like Star Wars, things like that, that's American mythology. And I think Transformers falls into that as well.
Oh, definitely. Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Peter Bryan and James Carpenter from TSR for joining us today. JZP, great seeing you again on the show, and great information about the auctions and also about the storytelling and game design as well, man. You bring a lot to the show. And then again, thank you, Mike, for being our tech guy. We'll be back in 2 weeks with, I'm not quite sure what. I'm working on a project behind the scenes, and I think we're rolling a demo out to show on the show. I don't know. But either way, I'm 54 pages into it. So,
hey, Jay, before we go anywhere, what the hell is hanging on the back of your door?
Oh, that is my.
What is that?
It's a military fire jacket.
Okay, wow. This is a super jacket on the back of your door. I was like, God, this is a story.
I know. It was my Planet X costume from Halloween a couple years ago. So, but yeah, so we'll be back again. Siska also has a book review thing that she's doing, I believe, for Con to Couch.
Yeah, that's in the works right now. Yeah, she's I think she's working on the first recordings of those, and yes, you will be seeing a sort of a nice little mix of up and coming books, some science fiction, fantasy, all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, she's going to have some great authors that some of you may or may not be familiar with. Some you probably will be, and others it'll be an opportunity to be introduced to some new literature.
And then Buck Rogers will be back in a probably like next month or beginning of the year with the 3-part Draconian story, starring Siska as Ardella, which I'm sure will be interesting.
Oh yeah.
We got art from Bob Raymond, who did art for a TotalCon event for me. He did some Draconian art, which we will be showing off. So I want to thank Bob Raymond, and I also want to again thank Dan Bacon for the list of dead Autobots, and thank you to Flint Dilly for letting me hijack his show while he's off on his little vacation. So everyone have a great week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, and once again, everybody, thanks for watching Con to Couch, and thanks for all of our guests.
All right, thanks.